So what is the best carb solution for your Flathead Ford? When it comes to these old Flatheads, there's not a whole lot of options when it comes to buying a carburetor. But if that's the case, why is it that so many people are making the wrong choice? And honestly, if you ask me, it's probably because there's not a whole lot of non-biased information out there. So today, let's review some of your options. Honestly, my hope that this video will give you a little bit more context on what options you actually have, what options you should stay away from, and most of all, what fits within your budget. I'm well aware that one of the options, probably the best one you have, is not always in everybody's budget. That doesn't mean that you can't find a carburetor that's not going to perform well for you. So today, let's focus on 3 carburetors that are the most commonly purchased for Flathead Fords. We'll see which one is going to be the best for your project. And see which one is really damn good and holding the door open. Now the first carburetor on our list looks like a Holley 94. In fact, in most places that I was able to find it, it's actually advertised as a replacement for the Holley 94 carburetor. The retailers that you're going to find sell this carburetor for anywhere between $139 to $195 if they really want to stick it to you. The carburetor is produced by a company called Hankyo out of China. From what I've seen, it's basically like ringing a dinner bell to anybody who's trying to save just a little bit of cash on their restoration. But unfortunately, saving money, especially when it comes to the carburetor on your Flathead, rarely equates to a good performing carburetor. Now, I'm not going to lie, there have been people who have bought this particular carburetor and not had too many issues with it straight out of the box. Even a broken clock can be right twice a day. One of the biggest problems that we've seen with these carburetors is that they were manufactured by a company that knows nothing about carburetors. They got a hold of some plans from a company, more than likely Holley, to reproduce their carburetor, and when that contract ran out, they decided, hey, we're just going to start making these carburetors ourselves. Problem is that you have people that know nothing about carburetor technology designing carburetors and then trying to skimp on certain things within the carburetor in order to try and get their price point down. This generally results in things being changed that shouldn't be changed and were designed in for a reason. So if you're looking for a good performing carburetor that, has any form of fuel efficiency, even a little bit, these are really not the way to go. In fact, most of them are pretty much buggered straight out of the box. And keep in mind, these companies rarely give you any technical support, and on top of it, there's almost no additional parts in order to modify it to specifically tune it to your engine. Because these carburetors are rarely cross-compatible with the original parts. So if it's running too rich or too lean on your particular engine, sorry booby, that's what you get for paying next to nothing for a carburetor. Honestly, if you're interested in buying a carburetor that is relatively cheap and rolling the dice to see if it actually works for your application, then this carburetor is absolutely perfect for what you're doing. The part that I find funny about this is that in most of the descriptions that I've found on this particular carburetor, it actually states that this carburetor has passed a rigorous engine and comprehensive flow test. I'm sure at least one of them has. But what happens to all of the other one with quality control issues? Honestly, just because you can make a carburetor that passes some kind of engine and flow test doesn't mean that once you go into mass production, you're going to actually get any sort of a decent quality item. And I think we all know that the reputation coming out of China is a little bit less than good. With regards to any sort of a review on this particular carburetor, I have to say that it is absolutely excellent to buy as a gift for somebody you don't like. So coming in at number 2 on my review chart for one of the most common carburetors purchased for Flathead Ford guys would have to be the 9 Super 7 from Speedway. The 9 Super 7 comes in at approximately $249.99. And obviously, people are very passionate about this particular carburetor, and I know for a fact that Speedway sells thousands of them per year. Carburetors are known for being either bolt-on straight out of the box, or being nothing but problems from the moment it hits your porch. If you look at the reviews on Speedway Motors' website, you'll notice that this particular product has an excellent track record when it comes to reviews from customers. Keep in mind that many of those reviews were placed shortly after purchasing the carburetor itself, so they didn't actually have a number of days, months, or years running these carburetors to give a real accurate explanation as to how the performance of the carburetor handled over time. So the other thing that I noticed is that if a bad review is posted for the 9 Super 7, it often doesn't get added to the website, which makes their review process just a little bit slanted. But I will say that there are some reviews that really do go into detail as to the problems that they're seeing with the 9 Super 7. These were again backed up by other complaints that were happening on the Ham, the Ford Barn, the Flat Spot, and Truck Enthusiast websites. Unfortunately, quality control has always really been a problem at Speedway Motors. And one of the things that we've seen with these particular carburetors is the fact that they tend to leak almost directly out of the box. You will be dealing with fuel leakage issues almost right away. Many of these carbs need to actually be rebuilt by a professional rebuilder who uses genuine Stromberg 97 parts in order to get it to work right. Speedway doesn't really offer a whole ton of mod options so that you can really dial in the carburetor itself. Honestly, one of the largest problems that we've seen with the 9 Super 7 is the fact that it was built with an aluminum base rather than the steel base that the originals were done. The reason they were done that way is because when you take aluminum and you run air through it at a high speed, it has a tendency to build up condensation on the outside. So many of the people that have purchased the 9 Super 7 have complained about the issue of just water pouring all over their engine. Although there were concerns that the aluminum bases would shrink, causing the butterflies to stick, that really hasn't been seen other than 1 or 2 people that have come back and said that that was kind of an issue. But it generally wasn't an issue on the majority of the people that bought them. But the one thing I will say is if you want to show up to a car show and have your engine looking good, bring a rag because you will be sopping up water that it builds up on the outside of the carburetor. Now, I will say in our community, there has been a number of reviews and videos put out there stating that this particular carburetor has issues. Many people in our group purchase these carburetors and they either really enjoy them or they get the one carburetor that just is an endless sea of problems. And generally, most people just end up taking them off and realizing that they made the mistake of going cheap and decide it's probably best if I go get the real thing. And the next carburetor that we're going to talk about on our list is the only carburetor that isn't currently produced in China, and that is the Stromberg 97. Now, the new Strombergs that are being produced are made in the UK, and they come in at a price point of around $525 to $560, depending on what options you want. It's honestly kind of understandable as to why people are trying to seek other options when it comes to buying a new carburetor. They are almost twice what the Speedway carburetors cost, but in return, you get a carburetor that is properly built by people who actually know how to build carburetors. And because they're manufactured in the UK, the quality control that is actually happening at the Stromberg factory is genuinely a lot better than almost anything we're seeing with other two-barrel carburetors. Another huge advantage to these particular carburetors is the fact that they are cross-compatible with the original patented Stromberg 97s. So that means that all of the options that you have to tune that carburetor exactly to what your engine needs are actually available and produced by Stromberg 97. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to restore an original Stromberg 97 or you're just trying to tune in that perfect tune for your brand new Stromberg 97. All of the options are available to you, unlike the other carburetors that we've covered today. These carburetors have been on the market for a little over 10 years now, and that pretty much means that we've seen a diverse amount of people who have given them a shot, and most of them come back with positive results, versus the poor results that we're seeing with these other carburetors. Another huge advantage to the Stromberg 97s is the fact that Stromberg offers really good technical support. So in closing with this particular topic, I've found that you generally get what you pay for. And I understand that there are going to be people that really can't afford $525 for a new carburetor. So there has to be some sort of an option for you. And that option is, don't go buy one of these pre-made carburetors. What you probably are going to want to do is you're going to want to try and find a set of cores and restore them. Restoring antique 97 and 94s are about the best option you can do short of buying a brand new Stromberg carburetor. There are plenty of people out there that can show you exactly what to do if you want to do this yourself, and there are a number of services that either sell rebuilt carburetors or will rebuild your core for a pretty reasonable price. You're generally coming in about the same price as the Speedway 9 Super 7. The only difference is you're getting genuine parts and you know exactly how that carburetor is going to work when you install it. Wrap up by giving you one last little nugget of information, and that is, what is the CFM on these carburetors so that I know exactly which carburetor might be best for my application. Stromberg 97 will put out anywhere between 150 to 155 CFM given a stock carburetor build. If you're going to run a single or a double on your Flathead, these are perfect carburetors for that particular situation. 94s are also good because they can run anywhere between 155 to 185 CFM. If you're running a stock carburetor and you want just a little bit more pull out of it, another good carburetor to use is the Stromberg 48. Stromberg 48 put out about 175 CFM. So if you just want to take that CFM from 150 up to 175, this is a really great way to do it. Now, if you're going to run an engine that runs 3 carburetors or even 4 carburetors, one of the best carburetors that you can use for that particular application is the one that was originally used on the V8 60s, the small V8s from Ford Motor Company. Those carburetors put out about 135 CFM. So if you're going to stack them up, you can actually get more carburetors with less CFM and sort of balance that out so you're not running too rich. Now, these carburetors can be kind of intimidating to rebuild yourself. I honestly really don't recommend it unless you have experience rebuilding carburetors because they are very finicky in how they come apart and go back together. It is very easy to damage them. So if you're looking for somebody to rebuild your carburetor professionally, let me know in the comments where you are and what you're looking to have rebuilt, and I have a number of vendors that I can recommend. Also, it should be said that at one point, Edelbrock was remanufacturing the Holly 94, and unfortunately, they've stopped production of the carburetor, but the carburetor was actually a pretty decent reproduction. The only main issue was the fact that they didn't have any support parts for the carburetor itself. So there weren't much in the way of rebuild kits, jets, power valves, things like that, in order to make the carburetor a good solution. It's unfortunate because the 94 carburetor is actually a really good carburetor for Flathead Fords. I hope this information was somewhat helpful and gave you better tools to decide what exactly you're going to do with your antique Ford project. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are interested in more Ford or classic car history, please check out my channel. If you're interested in restoring an antique pre-1953 Ford and you need a little bit of help, check us out at myflatheadford.com or check us out on Facebook under The Flat Spot. If you have a little bit of antique history that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Be back next week with another piece of automotive history.